It's about, how about you stay with the woman you impregnate? How about you stop embracing gangster rap culture? How about you stop listening to music that glorifies the worst part of society? How about you stop acting like a criminal? How about you stop stealing stuff and we justify it? Blacks make up about 12% of the American population, more specifically black men, 6% of the American population. They're responsible for 60% of the murders. That's a thought crime. You have 6% of the American population doing 60% of the murdering, and yet white people are the problem? No.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. In this video, we got Charlie Kirk debating a university student. Let's get into it.
And my question has to do with affirmative action, and I mentioned several times earlier. In the history of the United States, as we all know, Civil War ended in 1865, and a lot of people think that slavery ended back then, but there was another form that is called indentured servitude that lasted until around the early 1900s, and so this form sort of continued, and then we got the civil rights movement in 1965. And so my question is, given the history, there are injustices done on people of color, and do you think that they deserve some sort of reconciliation? And if so, if not with affirmative action, what form? And if affirmative action is the answer, which, according to your answer earlier, not exactly what you agree with, but for what length, right? How long should it last? And that's my question.
No, no reconciliation, no reparations. We've already overly prioritized in society. I'll prove it to you. There is institutional black privilege in society today, and no one wants to say it out loud. Blacks can get into college with lower test scores. They get more acting contracts. They're literally in every other television commercial, right? They're allowed to, literally, if a white person says a certain word, you could be completely terminated from public life, right? And so we spent trillions of dollars post-Great Society, post the Civil Rights Act paired with the Great Society. Did any of that help? No, actually, blacks got poorer on average. And so before the Great Society, 75% of blacks growing up in America had a father and a mother in the home. Now that number is anywhere between 20 to 25%. So America got significantly less racist. We spent trillions of dollars in our urban corridor. We implemented affirmative action in our government hiring practices, in our corporate hiring practices, in our college admissions. And yet blacks on average are poorer than they were in proportion to the 1960s. What changed? And the answer is that we are not confident, we're not honestly courageous enough to empower black voices to say, hey, you have to fix the problem in your own communities. It's not about white guilt or white pandering. It's about, how about you stay with the woman you impregnate? How about you stop embracing gangster rap culture? How about you stop listening to music that glorifies the worst part of society? And people are afraid to say this, and Thomas Sowell wrote an entire book about it. And the affirmative action creates race resentment is what ends up happening. And while I acknowledge that, yes, of course there were laws that were unjust in the past, we've already lived under the biggest reparations program in the history of modern society, and it's been an abysmal failure. You want to know what true liberation would look like? Black America taking responsibility for their actions and doing the 3 to 4 things that are necessary to succeed in America. Getting married before you have kids, graduating from high school, get a job, any job, and not committing crimes. This is what drives me nuts about the looting stuff, is that people say, well, it's just a matter of, it's a matter of survival. How about you stop acting like a criminal? How about you stop stealing stuff and we justify it? And the more that we do that, the more we are building a baseline of an acceptance. And here's the thing, just so we're clear. Blacks make up about 12% of the American population, more specifically black men, 6% of the American population. They're responsible for 60% of the murders. That's a thought crime. You have 6% of the American population doing 60% of the murdering. And yet white people are the problem? No. It's black privilege, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Follow-up?
Do you want to follow up? Sorry, you want to follow up? Yeah.
I have a short follow-up.
Yeah.
So thank you for your response, and that was great insight. And it sounds like you're personally affected to an extent through the effects that you talked about, but through the black communities. And since we are affected, and you as well, do you think we have some sort of responsibility to sort of fix the problems on, instead of just giving our opinion, actually doing to an amount of what we can do? And if so, what would that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here's what's amazing, is despite the fact that Asians have harder job getting into college, harder job getting high, Asians are like the wealthiest group in America by far, despite all the things that are thrown. And you might ask the question, why? Well, it's because Asian Americans stay loyally married far more than any other ethnic group. They prioritize education, and I don't want to overly generalize, but Asian moms don't put up with their kids committing crimes. Am I right? Right? A bunch of Asians looting. That dog does not hunt in the Korean American community or the Chinese American community. So, yeah, there's like strong social fabric and cultural fabric that say it's not acceptable to engage in this sort of behavior. So, no, I don't think we should ask for any special treatment. I think this, what is the goal? The goal is to do our best to try to create a society that values meritocracy and values work ethic and things you can change, not things you can't change. Thank you, man. God bless you.
I'm going to give you my thoughts on privilege in a quick second, but before I do that, and when you talk about white privilege or white people, often people think about the nuclear family, both parents at home, white picket fence, nice little house, but that is not the case. And when I talk about white privilege in this video, I mean like today, 2023, 2024, right now. The photos you're going to see here while I tell you my thoughts on privilege are from a photographer called Shelby Lee Adams, and this guy was brought to my attention actually by one of my subscribers. So Alex, big shout out to you. And the pictures that you're going to see of these poor white people in eastern Kentucky, in the Appalachian, this is not from the 1940s or 50s or 60s. This is from right now. These are some of the pictures that you're going to see from his book Salt and Truth and the Appalachian Legacy. And when you look at these photos from Clay County in eastern Kentucky, which the New York Post deemed placed the hardest place to live in the United States, and they figured this out, right, by looking at educational attainment, household income, jobless rates, disability rates, life expectancy rates, obesity rates. The median household income in this area of eastern Kentucky is about $22,000 a year. It's about half the American nationwide median. The disability rate is almost 12%. Nearly half the population of Clay County, which is one of these 5 counties that these photos were taken in, people are obese. So just imagine when you're looking at these photos, I'll give you my thoughts on it, about what I think privilege is. But just imagine when you're looking at it to go tell these people about their white privilege, because this is really next level poverty. Around 2010 is when I first was given a copy of Black Rednecks, White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. A good friend of mine said, yeah, you got to read this book. And that's what really set my journey off back then into looking into all this stuff. And since then, Thomas Sowell's been my go-to guy. I've read everything he's written, but I think that especially Black Rednecks, White Liberals should be mandatory reading for anybody who wants to delve into these topics. And it really got me thinking into the notion of privilege. Because as much as I think that white privilege is a myth, especially when you consider how many poor white people there are in America and Canada, I think it's time we start thinking of privilege in a different way. Because I'm not saying that privilege doesn't exist, I just don't think it has much to do with race. When it comes to privilege, we can really broadly look at it in 2 categories, right? You would have your economic privilege, which we could say someone who is born well off into a wealthy family, maybe a wealthy community. And if you are born that way, with economic privilege, well, you have a lot of benefits for that, right? In terms of your luxuries, your necessities to be all paid for. You're probably going to have access to better schools, healthcare, whatever you want. And that is, of course, a privilege, because to put it mildly, not everybody, most people are not born into economical privilege. And because of that, that's not something we can separate by race. But what I've learned from reading all these books over the years is that there is a deeper sense of privilege, and that is a privilege that I was born with in my family. Now, we were not dirt poor, we were not rich. I guess we would say we were a middle-class family. So I guess in some sense, I had some sort of economic privilege, right? I wasn't born in a trailer park or in a ghetto in the inner city. But the real privilege was that I was born into a family that had both parents at home, both parents were living, they were married, they stayed married. My parents are now passed away. But through my entire childhood, my parents were together. They never got divorced. And they put a big focus on higher education, a big focus on my moral formation, a big focus on teaching me the value of a dollar, good work ethic. making good decisions. And that is, I think, the privilege that I inherited. Because if you look at the data on black families and white families that live in the same community, the black kid that'll have two parents at home will generally outperform the white kid who is from a single parent household. I think that in today's society, the real privilege is coming from a good family where both parents are at home and both parents care and focus on raising their children the proper way. Because if you have two good parents and they're both at home and they stay married or stay together, the chances of you having a proper shake at life are exponentially better than, say, you were born in a, trailer park in eastern Kentucky, or you were born dirt poor in the inner city in a fatherless home. If you look at the rate of fatherlessness, the rate of broken homes, domestic violence, domestic turmoil inside the inner city, or in like poor trailer park area, you're gonna find that those rates are very high, exponentially higher than they are for most of us. Now, that doesn't explain everything, because you could be born in the inner city, dirt poor, with both parents at home, and let's face it, the reality of life is that it's going to be very hard for you. Well, it's going to be an obstacle for sure to get out of that, to get out of poverty. But even then, I would say it's a great advantage, and you will have a big leg up over the kid that is from a fatherless home and only has one parent at home. And the reality is, I find it quite sad that we talk about this as being a privilege. This should really just be the natural way that it is. But as we all know, it's not. It's not the case at all. The rate of broken homes and fatherless homes keeps on rising. In the black community, 70% of that community, is even higher in the inner cities, are raised in fatherless homes. For the white community, it's lower, but it's much higher than it should be. And it's rising every year. So I think when we talk about privilege in today's day and age, that's what we should focus on. Those are the two areas: economic privilege, and the privilege that is much deeper is being born into a two-parent household. And we shouldn't be looking to punish people that are from those households or that come from those situations. If somebody comes from economic privilege, good for them. They shouldn't be punished for it. Well, that's it for me, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that thumbs up button. Consider subscribing to the channel, help it grow, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.